Good morning. Welcome to Nonprofit Dreaming's Solution Spotlight. We're excited this morning to have with us Scott and Brian from NCOA for Salesforce. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Scott to tell us the challenge and the way they solve it.
Hey, Melissa, thanks for having us. I am Scott. NCOA for Salesforce is the solution. There's a few companies behind it. One of them is Tech Mailing Solutions, where I'm from, and Brian is from IOLite, who's an ISV for Salesforce. But Tech Mailing is an API provider that provides mostly barcoding information for large industrial mailers. And part of that solution is a very solid address correction and NCOA solution through an API that I have connected through Brian's IOLite connector. This has been a long, passionate project of mine to get people to move their address hygiene upstream to their address of record. And it's Pitney Bowes. They estimate $10 billion are lost because these addresses aren't being corrected at the address of record nationwide for industries across all specters. So not just nonprofit. But I've been working with Brian for several years on a bunch of different solutions that have to do with our API. And we're really, really, really excited to show you this. It's been melting minds because of how it works. I think it works how it should. So let me introduce you to Brian from IOLite, and he'll kind of show you the magic that connects this to Salesforce and makes it hum. So,
all right. Well, thanks, Scott, and thanks everyone for being here. I'll give a quick overview of what we set up and the problem that we try to solve with it. And the issue that we see a lot in Salesforce is whenever people are trying to connect APIs from third-party tools into Salesforce, because people can create whatever they want in Salesforce, it's really hard to be able to connect to an endpoint in Salesforce because it's always different. And so we actually created a tool that we call Nexus that allows us to think of it as like a universal catcher's mitt. So we catch the API and then we set it up with a mapping protocol. So we discover your schema and we allow you to map that in. And I'm going to show that here in a second. The reason that's important is we want to make sure that it's flexible enough so that anybody who is in the nonprofit space, depending on which nonprofit instance you're running, your contact information or your address information may be in different places. And we wanted to make sure we had a product that didn't care. And that's what our tool does, is it allows us to map the address collection capability wherever it needs to be. And so that's what our tool does, is it basically allows us to directly connect to whatever addresses you want to clean. And then we will grab those addresses directly out of Salesforce. This is not a data loader function. This is not a download. This is not anything an administrator needs to do. All you need to do is set the mapping and click go. And that's why Scott was saying that this is an amazing thing, because we're not asking anybody to do anything with V-Lookups. And that's the key thing that really is important here, is we want this to be as hands-free and as easy to use for people as possible. So what we'll do is we'll take the addresses, we'll send it to the Tech Mail system, which is what Scott represents. And we're taking that data and we're running it through two processes. We'll run it through what's called CAS, which is the Coding Accuracy Support System from the Postal Service. What that means is we're going to make sure that, if you said Harris and it's supposed to be TERR and it's drive instead of DR period and all that stuff, you guys have seen that before. That's just your standard address correction stuff. What we're doing is we're making sure that the addresses are correct in Postal Service format. Once we've got it in a correct and standardized format, now we can go check the NCOA registry, and we can say, now that we have that set up, now we can see, has this person moved? So we're checking national change of address. An interesting fact is, I believe Scott says there's 1,000 people move every day, or what's?
No, it's 100,000 people move 100,000 move every day on average. 100,000. So this goalpost shifts constantly. Yeah.
And so what that if you look at that number across an entire database, what that means is that in a year your addresses will decay by 12%. And so from that standpoint, it's really important to be able to have address hygiene and being able to catch up with your constituents. And especially in the nonprofit world where your lifeblood is represented by your constituencies, you need to know where they are. And so this is something that, if you think about it from a personnel standpoint, when you move, you tell the post office by filling out that little yellow card that you moved. You're done. You didn't tell anybody else. It's up to the customer. It's up to all the companies, all the nonprofits out there to go query the post office to go figure out that you moved, right? Because you're not going to get that notice from that person. So that's what we're trying to offer here, is the ability to say, okay, I've got my addresses in Salesforce, click a button. Let me get those changes done. And so we'll do two things for you. We'll fix the addresses to make sure they're standard in terms of the CAS certification. And then we'll check them against NCOA to see if they've moved. And we'll respond back to you. And again, thinking about we allow you to put the responses wherever you want. So if you want it to go back into the contact record, great. If you're in the NPSP version, they have the extra address object. All we do is we just create a new address object. And that way we're basically versioning out your addresses so that you've got the correction available for you. You have the ability to control how you want to handle the responses from this, as far as what fields you want to put it into and where you map it to. Again, that's what our tool does, is we give you the mapping capability so that you can design your own processes. We're not going to be prescriptive about that. So one other thing that I would mention is that when we complete this process, one of the other benefits is we actually get the postal certifications that tell you that you have now completed address cleansing with the Postal Service, and we give you the forms that tell you that you are now qualified for best cost postage. And so if you are actually running things through a mail house, what that means is that you've done the work that typically your mail house has already done, so your mail house doesn't get to charge you for that. And you can also provide the certification messaging to say, we have completed this, and so we are now qualified for best cost postage. And so that's all something that you can provide to your mail house if you're running it, or if you're going direct to Postal Service, you can take that in there too. So that's the setup for all the stuff that I'm going to show you here. I'm going to share my screen here in a second and show you how this all actually works. But while I'm doing that, let me pause and see if anybody have any questions or any thoughts you want to throw into this before I start doing that.
I have a statement, Brian. The thing you said about clients filling out that change of address card, people need to remember this is a consumer behavior thing. You're not changing that. That exists. So it's really, really important for everyone, whether you're using our solution for NCOA or anyone else's, to run this process and get updated address information, because that's an expectation.
Brian, you can cross that. You can cross this Google Meet pop-up as well.
How do you do that?
There is a cancel sign on the right side, top right of this pop-up.
Right here?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's still working. Okay, thank you.
That looks better.
Okay, good, because yeah, that was awful. Okay, so here's what happens. We would allow you to create it. We would download the IOLite Nexus software into your Salesforce instance, and we would download the connector that allows us to bring in the definitions for the API for the TechMail Verify and Confirm connector. What we'll do with that is we'll see, okay, what are the connector functions? These are the different endpoints or the different components of what we can do. And in this particular instance, we've actually set it up so that we can run addresses from the billing account and the mailing account, from the billing address on the account, or the mailing address on the contact. And I put this in here just to be able to say, okay, this is this is showing you the flexibility that we don't care where your addresses are. You can go do whatever you need to do and set it up. And so essentially what happens is as we're sending information, we're going to be able to get data and push it into your sales from Salesforce into TechMail. And when we do this, we actually download from TechMail the definition of all the stuff that we're going to be able to get as we return that response. So when we send our addresses out, we're going to get information back to where we get the city, the code from it. We're actually going to give you additional data like the congressional district, the FIPS code, which is what allows you to see the actual metropolitan statistical area that you're part of. And then we also give you all of the corrected information. We'll give you the zip for if you need it. We'll also tell you if there's a duplicate in the batch of addresses that you send. If you send us 3 of the same kind, we're going to tell you that they're duplicated, and we'll tell you where those are. So all of that information is in here. All you have to do to set this up one time is go in here and say, okay, where are we going to put this information when we get it back? Are we going to put it back into fields that we created called Tech City, or are we going to put it back into Shipping City if we want to? Again, this is just a mapping exercise. We're showing you all the fields that are available on the account record, and you're able to put the data wherever it is that you want. Once you've completed that work and set this mapping up, then all you have to do is go into the list builder. What the list builder is it tells us which addresses do you want to send for correction. And so we'll just say, hey, we need to run it through TechMail Verify and Confirm. And you can do, we're going to say we're going to run either the billing account or the mailing contact, whichever one we're going to use. And we can decide, are we going to run this for CAS or are we going to run this with CAS and NCOA 18? What that means is NCOA 18, this is telling us we're looking back 18 months to see if somebody's address has changed. And so we'll be able to do that. We will have you set up with this thing called a PAF, which is the thing that the Postal Service needs to validate that we are performing all of this information correctly and it's being done under the correct postal jurisdiction. Once that's done, then all we do is we've already set this up, and we've got, since we're pulling this from the account record, we've already built up the SOCL statement on the first half of it to say, where are we selecting this data from? And so I can add a where clause in here where I can say where billing state equals Colorado, for instance. If I wanted to do something like that, and I can validate this query, or if I don't want to do that, if I leave this blank, that means I'm going to run my entire instance. And so when I run that entire instance through, that's going to say, just correct all of my addresses. We're able to handle bulk messaging, and all of our software is set up. The service is set up so that we can process up to 12 million records per year for a single price. So we'll validate the query and execute. And typically that's what we'll send all of this information out. We'll send it out and we'll bring it all back. And I'm just going to show you this. It takes up to 30 minutes to be able to parse all of the addresses that we have to send out. But you'll see here that we've created fields on the record that allow us to receive back all of that information. And this particular demo account we haven't run yet, and so it will take 30 minutes to complete this process, but we would basically bring back all of that information back here. And so you've now cleansed your addresses with just a couple of clicks. So that was what I wanted to show today as far as the demo, and hopefully that gives you an idea of what we've got. So let me pause again and see if you guys have any questions.
great timing. I do have questions.
Everyone usually does.
One thing, Brian, so cleansing that data, right? And I noticed you can actually have it overwrite what you currently have in your system, right?
Yeah.
So that you don't have to manually go back through. What is the percentage of error, that you have? I mean, you-
As far as like errors that we see that come back there. So the interesting thing is when we send the addresses off and we send it through the TechMail software, we get back, whenever we get those return messages, we give you a record ID of that code, and we also give you a success message code or an error message code. And the error message code is actually, these are all things that are defined by the U.S. Postal Service with different error codes. So depending on what you get back, you'll get stuff back like, no directional indicated, right? So if it was supposed to be, 400 North Oak Street, and you forgot the north part, if it was just 400 Oak Street, it's going to give you an error to say you missed the directionality, right? Or if it's, 400 Oak Street and Oak Street starts at 1000, then it'll give you a different error message to say address out of range. And so those are all the kinds of messages. So if you're that much of an address nerd, you can get all of the different error messages that can tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah. So the FIPS code, FIPS, I hate acronyms. Do you know what the acronym stands for?
Oh, wow.
Listen, do not get into postal if you hate acronyms. There's an acronym of acronyms.
I actually don't know what that is, but I do know it's a U.S. Census thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, and actually, NCOA, I don't know what NCOA stands for.
Yeah, so you know what? That's more common than I wish it would be, but it's the National Change of Address. It's the master database the Postal Service maintains to understand where people move, and it's been around for a while. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? People criticize the government for not being efficient, but it was created for efficiency. It was created to reduce the return mail and forwarding, and it saves the Postal Service billions of dollars a month. I mean,
so that was another question I had, Scott. I'm glad you brought, and I'm glad we discussed that because this only works in the United States, right? So,
correct. Yes. There's, there's less countries that manage this stuff on a national basis. The UK has a version, Canada has a version. I think I talk to a lot of Europeans and they're always like, oh God, like what you talk about is like, oh, it would be awesome if we could do that. But, they have different privacy laws that preclude them from accessing this type of data. Thankfully or unthankfully, I don't know, this is a different question, but I mean, we don't have those things here in the United States, more freewheeling,
Yep.
So Melissa, I can answer your question.
Okay.
Google is my friend. Federal Information Processing Standards Code, a standard numeric identifier used by the United States government to uniquely name and pin geographic areas such as states, counties, cities, and countries, or states, counties, and cities. So it's a code. It's a Census Bureau thing. I do know that.
Yeah, it's a Census Bureau, yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. I'm done with all the easy questions, probably. Akash probably got the hard questions.
No, I don't have hard questions, but yeah, I have a few. So I noticed, Brian, when you were displaying the pop-up where you were actually mapping a field, right? I noticed there is a chat box that override field data. Yeah.
So go ahead. Yeah, sorry. I'll let you ask your question.
So my question basically is, if we don't select it, right? We know that if we select it, it will override whatever was stored there in the field, right? What happens if we don't select it? Does it create a duplicate record for the address, or how is it? Yeah.
There's kind of a dependency here. There's kind of two things going on. One is, and I didn't go into this on there, but you can select the DML action that you want to perform. So if you're doing an insert versus an upsert, you typically don't see, so if I'm doing an insert, that's automatically going to be a new record, right? So that control point is specifically for upsert, and that allows us to be able to say, okay, if I'm bringing back a whole record, but I don't want to update your last name, but I do want to update the address and the zip code, then I could check that box to say, do not update, because I don't want to update your last name, because that is information that's going to be coming back on the response record, but I don't want to overlay it. So it allows us to have a little bit more granular control over the fields that are responding, because I'm bringing back a full record and I'm updating a full record in Salesforce. But if that's not what you want, then you can control it with more fine grain.
That makes more sense now. Upsert and insert, right? So that makes sense now. Yeah. So my next question would be, so because we are getting this data from external API, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So why we are hitting that API while our API is reading through the Salesforce data about the addresses, right? The account addresses, like the mailing address or the shipping address, right? I just want to know that, does it go in a batch process, or does it like go in one by one? Why I'm asking that question basically is from the API limits standpoint.
That's a great question.
Yeah. So we have everything that you saw is all using bulk API, and we are bulkified all the way through this process as far as how we set that up. So we are in no danger of hitting any of your API limits for any of the stuff that we're doing here. We do run this under load. We have clients that have millions of records that they can send off, and again, it grinds. It takes a while, but we will be able to pull that information back, and we can run in volume as pretty much as much as you want.
Great.
Yeah, there's actually a limitation. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Those were the only questions. Thank you so much for answering those.
I have one last question I thought of, just because it sprung into my mind. So I'm curious, for example, my daughter just graduated university. She's eventually going to have a job and live somewhere else, right? And hopefully do a change of address, right? So thinking about households, right? And I mean, if you're familiar with Nonprofit Success Pack and the way it's set up, you can have a household address. Well, there are 3 of us in our household, but only one of us will be changing address. So how does this handle that?
So I don't know, Scott, if you want to take this one. I'll answer from a technical perspective, but
there's a few things that are going on there that are
there's 2 things going on here. One of them is on the technical side of it. The other is on the user side of it. When you fill out your NCOA form, you are selecting for, is this individual or is this the full family or full household, right? And so that allows you to do that. Typically, when we send this information, so that's the information that you need to know about how the NCOA process works, right? How we handle it technically is when we're sending that information out. Again, I know I was flashing that on the screen, but we're saying, what was the person's name and what's the address, right? And so we're sending that and we're checking it off against the name. And so if you moved but your daughter didn't, or vice versa, then we're going to know, based on the name, we're going to know whether we need to provide an NCOA update or not, because you didn't move, your daughter did, and that would be the difference of what record we would respond with.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it depends on how it's set up. I mean, go ahead. I don't need to provide.
No. Ryan, you can continue. I'll ask my question later on. I have one more.
Sure.
Okay, so basically my question is, because the API, I'm not sure about what parameters the API needs, but Salesforce will be reading the ID of the record, the name of the record, and whatever is the field value stored in the address fields. right? And it is again a what should I say? It is a collective field for different address related fields, right? So it is one complete address field. Yeah. So my question basically is, if it is because the external API might not need the ID of that record, right? What we are considering for the uniqueness between both systems, right? Because take for example, my email is xyz@akash.com or nonprofitdreamin.com, right? Is it how it is connecting that this is the address, or it is only reading the address? That's it.
Yeah, it's reading the address, but we're also providing the Salesforce record ID in which it comes from, so that we're able to round trip the data if we need to, and we also get record information from TechMail as a response, so we can actually connect the dots between the two systems as well. And so that's all stuff that we've got baked into our API solution and how it works.
Thank you.
That's a good question, though.
Fascinating. And boy, we're right on time,
I know,
guys.
we're pretty quick. They're good questions, though. There's usually more. And if you have more, please contact us. We're happy to share.
Yes. And yes, if you have more questions, if you watch the video later and want to get in touch with Scott, please do. He's on LinkedIn. I know is a good place to get a hold of him.
You know what, Melissa? It's nice to have Eganhouse as your last name.
That's right. You're probably, are you the only Scott Eganhouse on LinkedIn?
I think I'm the only one in the world. It's an unusual last name, so it's helpful to find me, I guess, or not.
Well, and I appreciate you all being, I feel like I've had a huge education in just a very few minutes. And so I appreciate a lot. And we hope we'll see you at the next Nonprofit Dreamin'.
You will, Melissa. Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.
See you, Cash.